Hello and welcome to Ask Amanda Now. I am your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. It is Friday. We are live. We're here on the Your Strata Property Facebook page. I know some of you are watching this on YouTube. I know lots of you are watching this on LinkedIn. You are all very welcome. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've had a fabulous week in Strata. I certainly have, and especially this afternoon. Not so much in Strata, out of Strata. I was just at a lovely afternoon tea at my son's school that was put on for the mums to celebrate Mother's Day, which is happening this weekend. So, in case I forget when we're signing off, happy Mother's Day to all the mums and those wonderful women who play the role of a mother in somebody's life. I hope that those of you who are coming in live have had a fabulous week. If you want to give me a hello here, let me know that you're here. I'd love to see you. If you're catching the replay, I love seeing those hellos come through on the replay as well, as so many of you do. Jennifer is here saying, hiya from Cat Lady. Hey, Jennifer, Cat Lady. Lovely to have you here with me live. Now, this is an Ask Amanda Now session, a little bit different to our Friday live sessions every second week or so. I invite you to send me a question. Send me your Strata question that you want to go in the draw. You want to go into the lottery. You want to go into the raffle to see if your question will be the one chosen to be answered on an Ask Amanda Now. That is what we're doing today. There are lots of you out there with Strata questions because they all filled up my inbox when we sent that email out this afternoon inviting your questions. And we've had some questions on the Facebook page as well. The team has done an excellent job here at Your Strata Property headquarters, putting all of those in the Excel spreadsheet for me. And I've had a look and I have chosen one question to answer here today. And we're going to be making two question askers happy today because two people have asked almost exactly the same question. And when we get more than one asking the same question, that is very often the question that I'm going to choose to answer for you. So we'll let you know what that is. Sean B is here. Hey, Sean, thanks for the wave. How you doing? And Sean M is here. We'll just wait. We'll just wait and see if we get the Sean trifecta today. I know our other Sean often catches the replay. Kristen is here. Hey, Kristen. Wonderful. Great to have you all here with me live. We're going to jump into this question. I'll ask the team to bring that one up onto our screen here. It is a question that was asked by two. I told you earlier, Leisha and Amanda have written in and asked almost exactly the same question. What are the various methods for raising funds in Strata? And in particular, what are the pros and cons of Strata loans? Good question, timely. It is one that I get asked a lot. It is one that we've had a little bit of conversation about on the podcast, on live previously, and I am going to direct you to some more resources if this is a question that you too want the answer to. If you want to go deeper after what you hear today, we'll give you the links to some podcast chats, to some live chats where we're talking a little bit more about Strata loans. But I thank Leisha and Amanda for asking this one. If they're able to tune in live, let me know if you are here. Suzanne is here saying hello. Vivian, how are you? Veronica, Josephine. Kristen is saying great question. Yeah, I thought so too, Kristen. Josephine's asking me, is it too late to ask a question? I get questions coming through 24/7. I have to tell you, Josephine, for an Ask Amanda Now session, we do close the doors at 4:00 or just before 4:00 so that I have a chance to look at them and form some thoughts about the question. So I am only answering this question you can see on the screen about funding and Strata loans here today, but I will let you know where you can go to ask your question if this isn't the one that you wanted or have submitted to be answered here today. So this is important. I've said it's important, and it is a question that is coming up more and more regularly. And that is because I think so many of our strata buildings are aging. They are getting older. We have quite a number of buildings that are in that 30-year plus bracket, even 20-year plus bracket, and they have not had any work done on them until now. So we have leaky roofs, we have leaky windows, we have concrete cancer, we have balcony balustrades that need to be dealt with, we have lifts that need to be replaced. I own in a building where a few of those things need to be done, and we have just embarked on a capital works project. The work is urgent for some people, and it is both urgent and expensive. More expensive now than it has ever been before for a few reasons. Cost of construction is just generally high these days. And when we're dealing with waterproofing in particular, in Strata, we have some pretty onerous legal obligations now in New South Wales with our Design and Building Practitioners Act. And it is indeed making the work more complex, more expensive. We need specialist expertise, particular experts to sign off on documents and to do work now, and it is making that whole process more expensive. So that is why I think we're getting this question about how do we pay for this? What are our funding options? What exactly is a strata loan, and what are the pros and cons that we should be thinking about when we're considering each of these options as an owner's corporation? So I am going to walk through the three options I say that there are for funding capital works in Strata. And I'm going to let you know from my point of view some of the pros and cons of each of these options. I would love for those who are tuning in to drop your comments in as well as to what you see the pros and cons are. Maybe you have some personal experience with each of these options. Maybe you have a preference. Maybe you've seen all of the options at play and there's one that you would recommend over others. First of all, one way to fund capital work in your building is to use money that your building has set aside in its capital works fund. So maybe some of you, I'm going to admit that this is rare, actually have a healthy balance sitting there waiting in the capital works fund because of your excellent planning. In New South Wales, as I know is the case in other states, we do have a legal obligation to have a 10-year capital works fund plan. The idea being that by the time you get to that year when the roof membrane needs to be replaced, when the lift needs to be replaced, you will have saved up enough money to be able to pay for that. That money is going to be sitting there waiting for you in your capital works fund. Completely understand if you're sitting there saying, what kind of utopia would that be? What kind of buildings actually are able to save money in accordance with their capital works fund? It's the case that we need the plan. It is not the case that we have to comply with the plan. That's a bit of a bugbear of mine that we have this legal obligation to have a plan in New South Wales, but we don't have a legal obligation to actually comply with the plan and raise the money. So that's why we see so many buildings that, although they've got a plan, somebody maybe looks at each AGM, they don't actually have any money set aside and they are surprised by the cost of capital works. But if you've got the money there in the bank, that's a great benefit. Why? Because there will be no delay. You can engage those contractors straight away. You've got the money there ready to pay them. You don't have to borrow the money, so there's no interest to be paying. Downsides, maybe, to having saved the money and left it there for the literal rainy day. Well, that money has then been sitting there in the bank account of the owner's corporation, possibly for years, possibly not doing anything, unless you have a particularly proactive committee or a proactive strata manager who has recommended that you take that money and put it into an interest-bearing term deposit. It's quite possible that there hasn't been any interest being earned on those funds, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you've been setting them aside in accordance with your capital works plan. Another downside, some owners see it this way. If I'm contributing to work now, to the cost of work now that might not be done for another 5, 6, 8, 10 years, then I am paying for work that will benefit future owners. I might be planning to sell within that period. Why should I be topping up the fund when I'm not going to benefit from this work? I hear that. I'm not sure that that's a real downside because, as I said on a training webinar recently, I think that educated purchasers who are buying in to strata buildings are now aware that they need to look at the health of the capital works fund, and they're looking to see that there is money set aside. And I think that you can be adding value to your investment if you are actually setting aside money in the capital works fund, even if you think you're not going to be an owner and you're not going to be there at the time that that money needs to be spent. So that first option, how do we fund capital works? One option, well, you've saved the money over many years and you've got the money in the bank. I think that is possible, definitely, but it does require some very diligent, very focused saving. This is our question back on the screen here, asked by two separate people today. What are the various methods for raising funds? What are the pros and cons of strata loans in particular? I'm working through those methods. I've talked about having the money set aside already because we've saved in accordance with our plan. That's one method. I'm going to move into what the second method is. But first, I'm going to acknowledge some more viewers who are coming in live. Shana's here saying, "Hi, Amanda. Great to be back with you. Although the cruise to Hawaii was fabulous. I hope you've had a fabulous trip. Shana, you deserved a break. Good to have you back." Sean saying, "We have the plan. I want to raise more." So that's interesting, Sean. Let me know, is your building raising funds in accordance with the plan? Sometimes I do find that these plans can be quite generous, and even though, as they should be, even though owners are looking at the plan and thinking, well, we should raise that, they are raising only a proportion of what's recommended in that capital works plan. And other owners are saying, well, we should be raising what's in the plan. I'm wondering if you're telling me we are raising what's in the plan and I want to raise more. So I don't think the plan is sufficient. One of our short videos that was posted here on the page might have been last week as I was delivering a webinar for the Real Estate Institute. One of the guest experts on that webinar was teaching us all about the Design and Building Practitioners Act and was reminding us as lawyers, as strata managers, as real estate agents as well, who were tuning in, that many buildings have 10-year capital works fund plans, but the plan is not DBPA, Design and Building Practitioners Act compliant. So the plan does not take into account that work is so much more expensive now because of the Design and Building Practitioners Act. So the recommendation, that was from John Riad, was the expert. The recommendation from John was that managers should be encouraging their buildings to actually revise their capital works fund plans, taking into account that the cost of work is more expensive now with the Design and Building Practitioners Act in place. Sean's answering my question saying, yes, raising in accordance with the plan, but it's not adequate for getting the painting done sooner rather than later. Yeah, so that happens as well. We have these 10-year plans, and then we find that we can't wait until year 5 or 6 to get the painting done. It needs to be done now. Unexpected weather events are playing a big role in that as well. So I wonder if our 10-year plans, as well as having to be Design and Building Practitioners Act compliant, do they need to be weather compliant, climate change compliant with this new world that we're living in? That's an interesting one. We're having to spend more money sooner than we had planned. Denise is here saying, hi. Hey, Denise. Kristen saying, maybe one day legislation will require following the Capital Works Fund plan. Maybe. We can keep asking for it, Kristen. Robin is here. Robin, I can see you asking a question there, Robin, similar to Joe. One question here today. I'll let you know where you can go to have that question answered. 3 ways that we can be raising funds. Pros and cons of each method. I'm going to move into the second way that you may choose to raise money in your communities to pay for capital work. You can raise a special levy specifically for the purpose of replacing that roof membrane, replacing the windows, for replacing the lift. This is a special levy that is specifically for that project. You need an ordinary resolution at a general meeting, and you can decide whether that levy should be payable all in one go, one installment, or multiple installments, 2, 3, payable each month over 12 months. It is up to you. The benefits And downsides to that kind of method? Well, the benefit is that owners are all pitching in from their own pocket. So there's no loan, there's no borrowing. That means there's no interest to be paid. You're only forking out the money when you need to fund the project at the time that the money is due. So you're not doing all of that saving and contributing to the account many years in advance. There's some flexibility there for the owners to decide how they want to pay the special levy. You can decide as part of your general meeting motion, is it going to be all paid within 30 days? Is it going to be paid in 3 separate and equal installments? You have some control over that. The downside to raising a special levy specifically for capital work, it may not be quick enough for your needs. So if the roof is leaking now, we need that money available now because we have a legal obligation to fix the roof. And if you don't have the money in the bank and you're deciding to levy owners, you need to give those owners generally 30 days to pay. And then you need to bank on the fact that they're all going to pay on time. And once that money is all there and available, that's when you can engage the contractors and you can spend it. So you might have a community where you've got very healthy levy payment practices and you know that everyone's going to pay on time. So that works for you. Or you might have a community, perhaps a larger building, where you just don't know whether there are going to be some owners in arrears. Those owners then have to be reminded. There may need to be legal proceedings commenced to recover installment amounts that are not paid. It can make that whole process a lot more complicated and can delay the event of finally being able to do the work because you've got the money in the bank. We're here today talking about the different ways that we can fund capital work in our Strata building, 3 different ways that I am speaking to. I've talked about the great savers who have the money in the Capital Works Fund ready to go. And I've just shared with you the option of raising a special levy specifically for the work. I'm going to head to those comments where I think some of you are sharing your experiences. Sarah saying we have this issue at the moment. Great. So I'm really pleased that you're able to join us here, Sarah. Angela saying we have not raised funds in accordance with our 10-year plan. We have 0 capital funds, literally, yet other owners are disgruntled about having to raise a special levy to pay for repairs and maintenance. Yeah, doesn't sound like a great situation there, Angela. So it sounds like you don't have a specific project necessarily that needs to be done, but you're 0 in your capital fund, so you can't even pay for your regular repairs and maintenance, maybe 0. I wonder if you're 0 in your admin fund as well. So yes, you might need a special levy, probably do need a special levy to be able to top that up. I'm really pleased we're talking about this today because Rena and I spoke about it on the podcast this week. This week's podcast episode, among other things that I know many of you have enjoyed, Rena's long list of the tasks that a strata manager has to undertake. I raised this question of how we spend special levy funds. So if you are raising a special levy for a specific purpose in New South Wales, I think our legislation is quite clear that those funds then need to be spent on that purpose, the purpose for which they have been raised. So that's perhaps another maybe downside to having a special levy to pay for a specific capital works project. You raise all the money, it can only be spent on that project unless you go back to a meeting and have another resolution that allows it to be spent on other items. You're estimating up front how much that work is going to cost. So you want to make sure you're raising the correct amount. If the work ends up being more expensive, you got to go back and raise some more money at a general meeting. If the work ends up being cheaper, then in my view, and I talked about this with Rena on this week's podcast episode, you will need to go back to a meeting and pass another resolution about how you are going to spend that leftover amount, because otherwise you've resolved that it should all be spent on the work, right? So if you end up with 20 grand of that special levy income left over for work that no longer needs to be done, you should have a further motion at a general meeting making clear how you're going to spend that leftover money. Sean's referring to cases where I might be able to talk to the obligation to undertake repairs. That might be in response to somebody there, Sean. Thank you. And Sean, yeah, you're ahead of me there. Sean, special levies can only be spent on the work that they're raised for. Yeah, so that I think that is one downside of that special levy option. Okay, I've told you that there's 3 different ways that we can be funding our capital works. And in answering Amanda and Leisha's question here today, I'm going to move into the 3rd way that we can fund capital works in our strata communities. Both Leisha and Amanda already raised this in their question. Yes, a strata loan. You can take out a strata loan. And we have talked about this a number of times on the podcast and on live, exactly what a strata loan is, how it all works. I'm not going to get into the detail of that here today because we've got some great free resources for you to go and have a listen or have a watch of about that, where I am talking to the experts, the strata loan providers, about what strata loans are and why you might want to think about getting one. First of all, podcast episode number 73. Many years ago now, podcast episode number 73, the 3 ways to fund your strata building. That was my chat with Paul Morton of Lanik. Lanik, a very well-known, very long-standing strata loan provider. Many of you will know Lanik and many of you will know Paul. Paul explains in that podcast episode these 3 ways that we're talking about. This question was already asked and answered back then. These 3 ways that strata buildings can fund both short-term and long-term projects. And Paul has a particular focus on the value of looking at the investment return rather than looking at the expenditure for these capital works projects. So if you want to find out more about strata loans and how those work from Paul Morton at Lanik, do go and have a listen to podcast episode number 73. Though it was many years ago, still very relevant today. And if you want to see Paul live in person, you can check out a past Friday Live chat where he was here with me as a guest of the show. That too, I think, was many years ago. We have a link here for you. If you're on Facebook, you will be able to use that link to go to our video library on Facebook and watch the replay of that live chat with Paul. We talked about why strata finance is so fascinating, the various situations in which your building might want to consider a strata loan, who needs to be involved in the process of taking out a strata loan. Paul even had a quick look at what some of the tax implications might be and how the repayment terms work. So Leisha, Amanda, if strata loans is really something that your buildings are looking at, I really encourage you to check out the podcast episode with Paul and the live chat with Paul to go deeper on this, what I'm calling the 3rd option for funding capital works projects. Something else that Leisha pointed out in asking this question today was this option that she had heard about when it comes to hybrid loans. I'll take that back. Leisha didn't use that word hybrid loans, but she said, I think I've heard somewhere that there's a situation where some owners can decide to pay their share of the loan up front and then not be subject to interest on the loan, and other owners will be part of the loan and they will repay their share over a number of years and they will therefore bear the interest. Is that real? Is that a thing? Is that possible? Short answer, Leisha, is yes, that is real. That is a thing. And we have spoken about it on the podcast previously. So Strata is a strata finance company that is offering what they're calling hybrid strata loans. Andrew Boss has been my guest. Andrew Boss from Strata Finance, my guest on the podcast a couple of times now, because this is what I'm going to describe as an evolving product. It is something new in our space. And Andrew first joined me for podcast episode number 332, sharing exactly what this hybrid strata loan is. And then more recently came back for episode number 396, explaining how these loans have become even more flexible. In that episode, Andrew's talking a little bit more about the tax consequences. He refers to a private ruling that an owner in one of the buildings that has a loan with Strata, a private ruling that they obtained from the ATO. When it comes to strata loans and the benefits of strata loans, it's really important that owners are getting their own financial advice, their own tax advice, because there can be some real tax benefits, especially for investor owners, where there is a strata loan that is taken out in order to fund capital works. It might be that the interest payments, for example, on that strata loan are tax deductible. Certainly something that any building owners in any building that are thinking of taking out a strata loan, whether it's a hybrid loan or whether it's a standard loan that we're all familiar with, every owner is involved in the loan and paying the interest on the loan, absolutely get some financial and tax advice that is specific to your situation so that you can make the decision what is going to be best for you. So strata loans are that third option for funding capital works. The benefits of strata loans, you can access significant funds quickly. I'm involved with buildings that have access to a $2 million worth of funds overnight because they've signed up that loan contract, $5 million worth of funds, perhaps more. You are only accessing the funds when you need them. So while you might have access to that $2 million loan, it doesn't mean that the loan provider just dumps that money into your capital works account. The loan is progressively drawn down. So the owner's corporation is not paying interest on the $2 million from day dot. It's only paying interest as it progressively draws that loan down. As I've said, there may be tax benefits, particularly for investor owners. So do get advice on whether that might be a good option for you. You can have long repayment terms for strata loans. And a question I think Amanda was asking in my inbox was, how does that work? Do we, the owner's corporation has to make the repayments of principal and interest on the loan, correct? Does that mean we then raise a special levy to make the repayments of principal and interest? You can do that. But from my point of view, a special levy is supposed to be for expenses that are unexpected, that you haven't budgeted for, expenses that come up and you haven't got the money in the fund to meet them. If you've taken out a strata loan, you should know what the regular repayments of principal and interest will be. So those repayments should be factored in to the year's budget and then are factored in to your quarterly levies. So I do see some buildings that like to repay their strata loans by way of one-off special levies each year, and it's a lump sum repayment each year. I suppose you could do that, but you could certainly, if you can be accurate about your estimating for your regular repayments, you could certainly be wrapping that up into your quarterly levies and making sure those repayments are happening from those quarterly levies and happening in accordance with your loan contract. I know that our strata loan providers, I've worked closely with LANIC, and I know how Strata works as well. I know that buildings that are thinking of taking out strata loans, representatives of each of those companies would come to your general meetings and have a detailed chat with you, detailed presentation about how all of this works and be able to answer your questions. You do need to have a general meeting resolution to approve a strata loan. Okay, strata committees. It's not your decision. It's not your call whether we have a strata loan or we don't, whether we have a special levy or we don't. These are decisions that are made at general meetings. Section 100 in our Strata Schemes Management Act says that borrowing, owners corporations that are borrowing need to approve that by resolution at a general meeting. That is front of my mind at the moment because I am working with a client in a building where there has been a loan and there's no resolution. So I was looking up our legislation today to just check. Yes, I think there's supposed to be a resolution. Yes, Section 100 in the Strata Schemes Management Act requires that resolution. To just close off our discussion about strata loans, I've told you that we're going through the benefits and the downsides of each of these funding options. A downside for strata loans, well, probably pretty obvious. There is interest. There is an interest component payable, and that interest is relatively high. It isn't technically unsecured loan. Interest rates, I think, are sitting at around 9% for strata loans now. They're generally higher than the mortgage interest. If you were to borrow money on the security of your home in order to pay a special levy, you probably would be paying less interest, but that's all the reasons why you have to consider these options with reference to your own individual circumstances. Purchasers might not like seeing strata loans on the owner's corporation's financials. That is perhaps why a hybrid loan sometimes is a more desirable option, because some owners can choose to pay out their share of the loan upfront if they want to sell and not have to worry about having that conversation with purchasers about strata loan, about why the strata loan is there and what their commitment will be moving forward. I can see that Amanda is here saying, brilliant. I called Lanik today with some generic questions. They were super helpful. He also sent me a funding proposal. As soon as the quote from the plumber lands, we'll hold an EGM to discuss and vote. Excellent. And I am so glad, Amanda, A, that you're here, and B, that you have raised that point about holding an EGM to discuss and vote, because that is where I'm heading next. I was asked a question recently, Amanda, I'm a Strata committee member. There's a lot of work to go on around the building. We can't afford it. We've got to make a decision about special levy or strata loan because there ain't no money in the bank. And I don't know what to do. I know there are some owners who won't be able to afford their share in a special levy, and they might have to sell. They might send them broke. It's going to be really difficult for them. And then there are other owners who can afford it, and they're telling me, we don't want a strata loan because we don't want to pay the interest on that strata loan. So what do? I don't want to get this wrong. And my answer was, you're a strata committee member. You are not making this decision. This is a decision that goes to the general meeting. And when you have this knowledge that I'm delivering today and that these additional resources will give you, you can go to that meeting very clearly and confidently setting out these options. If you don't have the money in the bank in the Capital Works Fund and you're thinking about a special levy or a strata loan, those are probably going to be your two options. And I suggest that you present both of those options to owners at a general meeting. If we raise the $5 million special levy for our 20-lot building, everyone is going to have to contribute $200,000. They're going to have to do that within 2 months because we need to get the work done now. We're under a fire order or we have a tribunal order. We have to have the work. That is option A, for example. Option B, we take out a strata loan and then we can gradually repay that loan over 10 years, for example. This is what the interest rate will be. This is what owners will be looking at, the bill that owners will be having to foot. Those are the options, right? They get put to owners at a meeting. It is not your decision as an individual. It is not the strata committee's decision. It is your obligation, I believe, to fully inform owners of their options, but then the democratic process is in play at the general meeting, and it is the owners who make the decision. When I relayed that to this committee member who was asking me this question, immediate relief. I could see their shoulders sort of go, oh, okay, not my call. Got it. Amanda, you're exactly right. It's the democratic process. I just take things so personally. That is how we can relieve our committee members of that burden. If you're doing the right things by getting educated, by understanding what these options are, then presenting them to owners very clearly, these should be decisions that can be fairly easily made. Dr. Nicole Johnston is here joining us from LinkedIn. Hey, Dr. Nicole. Hi, Amanda. Just finishing off a research project relating to this topic. I analysed the records of a number of ageing schemes and found that none of the OCs in the sample had discussed or obtained independent financial advice. When looking to fund significant remedial works, owners corporations should consider this. You are nicely setting out the considerations. Thank you very much, Dr. Nicole. Great question that we've had from Leisha and Amanda today, asking this and giving us this opportunity to talk about it. And I am so pleased that you, Nicole, are doing that research project. We'll look forward to hearing a little bit more about that in the future. Okay, so I believe I shared with you the further resources that I wanted to share on this topic of how we fund capital work in our communities. I've given you some of the pros and cons of each option. You either got the money in the bank because you have been planning in accordance with your 10-year capital works fund plan. That's great. I expect very few of you are in that situation, which is probably why you're tuning in here today. Second option is you raise a special levy for the specific purpose, the specific project. Third option is you go and get a strata loan. That is the question that was chosen to be answered here today on Ask Amanda Now. It was a busy day in my inbox for questions. So I know there's a lot of you out there who have not had your question answered. And even as we've been sitting here today, more questions coming through from Joe had a question, Robin had a question. Two ways that you can get these questions answered. It really is one way, but you'll each be in two different categories. Some of you I know, and I can tell from some of the names here, you are members inside our online membership community. I remind you, and some of you are in my inbox asking questions, wanting to be featured on Ask Amanda Now. If you are members, you can post your question inside our member Q&A forum, and I will answer it there for you. Type it up. We post under usernames, can't be identified by your username. Everyone's anonymous in the forum, except for me, because you want to know who I am. Type your question into the member Q&A forum if you are a member, and I will answer it over there. There are some great questions in my inbox, and I know that they are from members. So I encourage you members to go and log in to the forum. There is, yes, the link has been popped in here to remind you how to access the forum. That is for members. You will be prompted to log in. If you've forgotten your login details or you're having trouble logging in, the support team is always there to help. Support at yourstrataproperty.com.au. Just drop the team an email. If you are not a member and you have a question that you want answered, you can join us inside the membership. Find out more about everything membership has to offer. It's not just the Q&A forum, but I know how much our members love the Q&A forum. You can do that over at stratamembership.com. And I'll look forward to seeing your question and to providing you with more Strata support over there. That is all we have for today, our Ask Amanda Now session. I want to say a special thank you to the team, Romina and Rochelle, who are in the background helping me out here. We've had the banners going today. We've had many more links than we often have for an Ask Amanda Now session going in the comments, and they've done a stellar job. And thank you, everyone who has been here joining me live. Thank you, Leisha and Amanda, for your excellent questions. And thank you also if you're catching the replay. Happy Mother's Day to our mums for this weekend. I wish you all a wonderful weekend in Strata. I'll catch you here next time. Bye for now.